Hello, my name is Dr. Dustin Plattner, and my presentation is called Transforming Our Narcissistic Wounds into Divine Care for the FUNL Conference 2025. I'm very excited to be here and very honored to be invited to speak. Um, FUNL Conference and the Freedom Under Natural Law Conference is awesome endeavor, and I'm really thankful to all the organizers for reaching out, and you all are doing an awesome job. So it's a great honor to be here. And you can find all my work at freeasabove.xyz and all the work that I've been doing to try to help all of us move forward, all the stuff that I've been learning and building community around this so we can grow forward in freedom and stay away from things that don't make us evolve. So that's my aim, and hopefully then this presentation. So my doctorate's in clinical psychology. And so this presentation is sort of right up my alley of what I've been learning and to share it to you all so it'll be helpful. So, yes, so let's begin. So before we begin now, this presentation has material that will be difficult to fully assimilate at onset. So take your time with it. If you want, you can watch it over again to let it sink in. The topic of psychology and spirituality is a vast topic. So my aim is just to add to this wonderful endeavor and to help others grow up and begin their journey into the invisible realm, the spiritual realm. Um, and so hopefully it's straightforward enough as I go through this topic, but also these components are very deep, and um, the amount of time that to go over this in this presentation is just simply not enough, but it'll give you a good overview and stir up some things that you may not have thought about before. Etymology of narcissus. Well, the ancient Greek word is right there, but the transliteration is called narcissos, and it also is connected to the smaller Greek word, which is narke, as a transliteration. So these two words sort of embody the etymology of where narcissist comes from. So it's definitely Greek and pulls back to more ancient as well. And those are the two Greek words there. So narcissus or narcissos means the daffodil, the flower, which is pictured right there. And narke means numbness. So the narcissus flower has some of the kinds of the flowers have a big, strong smell. So it can kind of almost numb you to the world around you because the smell's so intense. This is sort of the idea that people have talked about with the flower. Well, and then now in Greek mythology, Narcissus is a character from Greek mythology, and he was known for his exceptional beauty, and he was the son of the river nymph and a river god in Thessaly. Narcissus's birth led to a prophecy that he would either have a very happy life or die young, depending on whether he chose love or not. So he never found love. He never was interested in anyone. And um, it's been told that s- some of the other gods that really liked him were really hurt. And so they cursed him. And so then cursed him so that he would look at his reflection in the water and fall in love with that. And which that did happen. So he saw his own reflection in the water, never fell in love with anybody, saw his own reflection, and then fell in love with it. So he was tortured because he fell in love with it, but it was only a reflection. He couldn't actually quite grab it and move on to it. So he couldn't break away from the reflection. Stared and stared and pined after it. He could never be satisfied until he died, just withered away, staring at his own reflection. And then a flower grew in that spot, and it was called Narcissus, narcissus flower. So the main concept of this idea is the way I kind of put it, it's a fixated gaze that cannot be easily broken. It's an internal, it's the same fixated gaze on yourself over and over, and then you become numb to the external world and any sort of things around it. You can't really relate to anything else. You're just stuck inside. So that's sort of the concept from this process of understanding the beginnings. Now, in clinical psychology, um, how this came to be in the DSM. So the DSM is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. This is the main book which the industry, the medical industry, the insurance industry, and the psychological industry use to diagnose the population when they come in for mental health issues, um, or something to that nature. They pull this book out and they thumb through it and they find, okay, here's what it is. The insurance is like this because it's very, succinct, and they can bill it perfectly and all this stuff. So um, it's somewhat helpful. In reality, it's somewhat helpful, but also not, so yeah. But the term narcissistic personality disorder comes from here, this manual. So a bunch of psychiatrists have got together over time, over the years. They sort of observed different behavior patterns of people, then they've categorized them. So the narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, is a characterological disorder. So what I mean by that is one that is embedded into one's personality and is not transient like major depression or generalized anxiety. Transient means it floats in and out. So it's more in the bones of the person. That's why it's kind of nefarious that way. So in the DSM-5, that's the newest version, a perversion, a pervasive pattern of grandiosity, need for admiration, and lack of empathy. Okay. So that's actually what's coming from it. This is sort of the crux of what it is, NPD. So, like I said, some of the nefarious issues with this, because it's a characterological issue. It's not, it doesn't rest and then go away. It's not transient. Um, the individual with the disorder doesn't really know they have it. They're not really suffering with like depression or anxiety or PTSD or OCD. These things the person suffers. They know they're suffering, but with a characterological disorder, and there's a category of them, but NPD is one of them. The individual doesn't really suffer. So they're not really aware of it is the issue. But the other people in their life experience it really heavily, the energy coming from the individual. They sort of got to walk on eggshells because they don't want to uh, cause aggressive attacks or passive aggressive attacks from the person suffering from NPD. Not really suffering, but because they don't really feel it, but the people around them actually suffer from it. And so it's really acute and palpable when you're around someone who has had this and is dealing with it. So, so that's the distinction to sort of highlight this in clinical psychology. So how does this come to be? So is not narcissism a bad thing? Are there good forms of narcissism? How does this come to be? Well, to answer these questions, we need to understand how we develop as a species. We need to go back to the beginning. To understand this, it's called etiology instead of etymology. The etiology, the beginnings of, right? So we're going to go on this topic of the developmental arc and the necessity of narcissistic mirroring. So we need to transform these narcissistic wounds, and I'll get into that. So we're thinking about first, how do they come to be in us? Well, the foundations of all of us as a species is we are motivated by a drive to connect, relational connection. It is the foundation of human action on 99.8, 99.1% of us. It is the foundation of all of us to connect and to bond. That's how we are. We bond and we connect. It is the foundation of us. This innate drive for relational connection is superimposed into the procession of time procession of time as we grow from infants to adults. Okay, beginning to the end. And that's this developmental arc of which I'm talking about. So, to further understand these details of the developmental arc, we need to start at the observation of infant life. We're going all the way back. So, this is what maybe most folks aren't quite attuned to. Maybe you are, but this isn't really talked much about. But in my doctoral work and postdoctoral work, this is more of a finer understanding of this. So, infant mental life, right? So, the necessity of narcissistic mirroring. During the first 6 months of life, pivotal moments in the mother child connection, which are essential for the infant to build a foundation to deeply know if the world is safe or unsafe. The first 6 months of life. Okay, it's huge. The mirroring can be seen as attending to the needs of the infant, not only physically, like feeding or creating safety, external comfort, but also emotionally as well. It's mirroring of the needs back to the infant. Emotionality is the key component in mirroring. It's the crux, the reflection back of the tone and the facial expression. So, as the uh, parent, the caregiver, mother, father, grandparent, whoever they are, they're reaching out. Not only is meeting the physical needs of the infant, but also the emotional, relational, and tonal and energy needs as the baby's having um, uh, an emotional, energetic experience. Is it mirrored back? That's the narcissistic mirroring back to. So they get feedback. The infant, the baby gets feedback from the caregivers. This is essential. This mirroring is the reflection back. It's to reflect back their world, meaning to see the need, to see it first, to observe that there's a need there, emotionally, physically, and then to meet the need. Huge. That's a huge process. So, all in all, mirroring is to keep them safe as possible, right? That is what we need to do, is to keep them safe as possible. Cute picture, by the way. Super cute. Yes. To keep them safe as possible. So, in this process, a little bit in this process, the mirroring from the parents or caregivers is essential in establishing now the personality of the infant is a big deal. Not only does the mirroring important to match for the infant, the baby, but also this is developing their personality. First 6 months of life. So you get this. The aim is to create, again, here's the aim. So we're meeting the needs, it's developing the personality, but here's the aim to create a consistent, cohesive, and dependable environment for the baby to develop. This is the aim of it. So narcissistic mirroring is to mirror back to the infant, definitely during the first 6 months of life. But as we know, the developmental arc, I'll get into that. But this is essential to create the establishment of the self, establishment of the ego. So John Bowlby was a child psychoanalyst, and he added a lot to this field. And he talked about what I was saying, the developmental arc. He talked about the cradle to the grave in his research and literature. So in his writings, in his work, our need for mirroring continues throughout our development. So the first 6 months of life are pivotal in shaping the personality based on the narcissistic mirroring that comes, the constant moment by moment mirroring. And then as we start developing, grow older, that mirroring still needs to come back to us to keep solidifying our sense of self, who we are, our value, our worth. The reflected attention, mirroring, attunement, or narcissistic mirroring is essential for our development of self-love. Ideally, as we know, adequate mirroring, what we've been talking about, would create a very mature and balanced young adult, ready to take on the world, able to take responsibility because they're not they're filled up. Their sense of self, their ego is strong. It's a healthy ego. It's strong. They got enough mirroring to build them up. They got enough reflection back. And they're able to have some self-love. And then as they have that self-love, they're able to care for others in the world. Ideally, this is the aim. Parental weight. The infant's continued mirroring needs take an emotional toll on parents. Captain Obvious. Okay? Obviously, it's huge. The good news is, though, even though it takes a huge toll, the good news is, well, one is it's wonderful to have children and to raise them and be stewards of them. It's an amazing spiritual endeavor. Wonderful. Also, as I just talked about in the last slide, it's very difficult at times. But the good news is you do not have to be perfect as parents. You just have to be good enough. So we need, as our species develops, we need parents that are good enough parents, not perfect, but good enough. This is also John Bowlby's term, good enough parenting. The good, the bad, the ugly. If these needs do not get met, or the infant being hungry, needing changing, some physical pain, misattunement, etc., if the needs aren't met, the infant moves into a state of a death instinctual force that drives them into action. Okay? The life force or the death force. And this moves them into a state, as we're to think about the infant's mind. This is mainly done by the baby through their crying, right? As we know by pure observation, infants move into splitting states very easily. And what I mean by splitting, it's just very binary, black and white. You can see how infants are happy and calm, sleeping, whatever it might be. And then if something's wrong, instant breakdown, meltdown. It seems like the whole world has fallen apart. It's that splitting idea. This term came from Melanie Klein, and I'll have a quote from her later, but this is the idea. It's a binary, it's first 6 months of life, very binary, black and white, good, bad, good, bad. So the splitting, this is what I'm talking about. As needs are not met in the parenting dynamic, experiences of deep disconnection can befall the infant. As the bad sets in and they start crying, it feels like there's a huge disconnection in the baby's mind. So I want to show you what that looks like in this video. So I'll play it here.
The still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby who's about a year of age.
I'm like a girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this. And then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points.
Yeah.
The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, what's happening here? She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, come on, why aren't we doing this? Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it, they actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good.
So as we can see, that was Dr. Edward Tronick, and he's done great work in child development. And that's called the still face experiment. And I just wanted to show you, as we're seeing here on this slide too, but adding it together, that how inextricably that is linked inside of us, the bond between the caregiver. And if that gets disrupted, how instantly we move into a state of good and bad. And so it's so fundamental to understand this concept in us all the way back to we were little. I know we're adults now. I understand this, but I'm saying back to when we were little is what I'm talking about. This is how we develop. So, which in the infant's world, the basic everything becomes all bad at the moment. If chronically not met, it generalizes deep into the infant's psyche. So the chronically not met is the ugly. The good is everything's connected. The bad is the breaking, but then the repair, what we just saw in the video. And then the ugly is the breaking, but no repair. And the person, the little infant, and then the toddler, if it keeps going on through the development, is constantly not met by the caregiver and the parent. This is leaving deep psychological wounds in the infant child. So here's Melanie Klein. She does some really good work. Although psychology and pedagogy have always maintained the belief that a child is happy being without any conflicts, and have assumed that the suffering of adults are the results of the burdens and hardships of reality, it must be asserted that just the opposite is true. What we learn about the child and the adult through psychoanalysis shows that all the suffering of later life are for the most part repetitions of these earlier ones, and that every child in the first years of life goes through an immeasurable degree of suffering. It has to be paint the picture of what this is in us and how sensitive we are as little ones and the mirroring that we need. So chronic unmet infant needs, failure of narcissistic mirroring, creates hooks in their inner world which demand rectification. These hooks carry through adulthood if not dealt with. Here is where we see egos getting in the way of individuals wanting true spirituality and freedom. People want these things in our adult life. They get in this, they start the egos of the individual. The ego wants, the ego's needs, right? We get into that system. So more specifically, it is the narcissistic wounds that have not been resolved. So it's like, I like to say the ego is actually, I mean, this is what we start talking about the ego, but the ego is actually a wonderful thing in strengthening our sense of self, who we are, the boundaries of you versus me. It is essential to us, but the narcissistic woundedness fragments our ego. We can't develop on because we're too wounded, because we didn't get it from we didn't get it from our caregivers in our early life. This becomes, so if we didn't get it and we're stuck in this chronically unmet state from our caregivers, there's an internal struggle always going on where we feel like the individual feels like they can't connect to somebody. And why is everyone, why don't I have any friends? It's an internal struggle over and over. And they begin to get numb to the feelings of others because they're so internally focused. They become stuck in the material world. They can't move on beyond the spiritual into the spiritual. Self-loathing. Self-loathing is created from the piles of narcissistic wounds that have not been integrated. Self-hate, that means hatred towards oneself. If you don't get mirrored back that you're valuable and lovable and that you're worthy to be seen and put time and energy and love into, if you don't get that, you end up beginning to think that you must not be valuable, you must not be important. Those are the more vulnerable feelings. Likable or lovable. You're not likable, you're not lovable. These things start getting put into our unconscious. If we don't get the mirroring that we need, it ends up being self-loathing. However, if there were chronic narcissistic wounds during the development of the individual morphed with certain personality temperaments in infancy. So every baby, we all have different temperaments when we become a more sensitive baby, a more stoic baby, a more high energy baby, a more lethargic baby, these sort of temperaments. And if they're mixed with unmet narcissistic needs, narcissistic mirroring needs that were not met, this creates a problem. So this could create the symptoms as described in the DSM-5 as a full-on characterological disorder. So with a certain baby temperament, maybe a high sensitive baby or a high energy baby with their needs aren't met, high intelligent baby, a highly intelligent baby, a high intellect baby. This can create sort of this perfect storm to have this happen, and it can move into the full-on NPE for folks. So the self-loathing is on a range from mild narcissistic woundedness. We all have narcissistic woundedness in us, but then what range is it on? Based on our temperaments and what we got or didn't get from our early environment. Okay. So we're all on a range of our own self-loathing. It's just on what range. Now we know how it happens. And we can see the dynamics on how it plays out, how it moves through in our development. And now we can understand that everybody's on a range. So self-love. So we all have self-loathing. It's all on a range. Now we got to move into self-love. Love is the antidote to the terrible position we find ourselves in, this terrible position of self-loathing, of feeling the pain internally. It is the key that unlocks the door. So self-love and his end goal is to heal the hatred that we have for ourselves. So I say it comes in a twofold process to develop self-love: taking responsibility and knowing and setting boundaries. These two are both very hard to do. They're very easy to say. But if someone suffers heavily from, as we all do, from the range of our narcissistic wounds, we need to transform it. And we first have to get a concept of how to transform it. And number one is the hardest thing to do. It's the hardest thing to do, especially if we're self-loathing, we don't want to pile more "you didn't do it right" onto us, more shame. We don't want to pile that on. We refuse to pile more shame on, but it's essential. So taking responsibility. The hallmark of building self-love from self-loathing is to look at what you created in your life through your own actions, cause and effect. You are in a position right now because you made decisions to get there. You did. There are some environmental factors that were out of your control, but a lot of it is based on your own decisions. You did it. You need to look at them and realize, what did I do to get me into this position where I'm at now? Because there is an energy that what you choose to do moving forward will create your future. The future has not been created yet. The future is created based on your actions moving forward. So, cause and effect. So as you take that and look deep into where you've gotten yourself from, you have to look at the truth, and that will set you free from your self-loathing. That will be the beginning. Okay? Knowing and setting boundaries. The second part is you must come to know what helps you grow and what does not. What are the things that are helpful for you and what are the things that are not helpful for you to grow? Just like a plant here. There are things that help plants grow and there's things that do not. You have to know the difference. Those are boundary conditions. Okay. So part of understanding boundary conditions is the masculine, the divine feminine, the two energies in balance. So as you are caring for yourself internally, the self-love, talk to yourself kindly. That's the feminine aspect. I didn't say nicely. I said kindly. Talk to yourself kindly. And the divine masculine aspect is, when you say, hey, that's enough. I need to stop doing that. It is not helpful. Stop doing it. Or this is really helpful, so I will do this. And then you do it. That's the divine masculine. So you know the boundaries, but you talk kindly to yourself. And then in some parts you say, I did that and I shouldn't have done it. I messed up. Own it. The divine feminine is owning it. So, okay, I messed up. I want to do better. And the divine masculine is taking and doing the action. It's the balance of those two. That's the beginning of self-love. So as I was talking about, being kind and nurturing toward yourself, the divine feminine, and also setting boundaries with yourself. And if you are moving into self-destructive actions, for example, you set hard boundaries to not do that. And if you can't do that, you need to go back to, what are your narcissistic wounds? Why must you do something that's self-destructive? Or why can't you do something that's helpful to you? What is going on? What did you not get when you were younger? Is a way to look at it. The other boundary condition in developing your self-love is morality, is knowing the difference between right and wrong, knowing what your property is and what another's property is. So that is the key. And obviously, once you understand what property is, then you don't steal that property. This keeps you in line with nature and the creator and love. And so as you can love others, you can love your own property and protect it, then you begin to protect others. This is how you navigate that space. So self-love, not only will the actions of self-love remedy our own haunting of self-loathing caused by unrectified narcissistic wounds, by taking responsibility and setting boundaries, it will bring us to a point where we begin to heal. So these are the constructions of how to navigate this self-love piece. And as we know, we cannot care for others if we do not care for ourselves. If we don't know how to truly care for ourselves and begin the process and the path of healing our self-loathing, self-hate, we can't develop our own self-love. Therefore, it is not going to go external to love the world, to bring our care into the world. It has to begin with you. That is the process. Even of initiation is stop lying to yourself. You've got to begin looking into your own world and tell yourself the truth. And if you can't tell yourself the truth, you need to have somebody in your life that will tell you, that you trust, that can tell you the truth. This is what's important so you can grow. This is all our job here on the jobs here on this planet, is to grow up. If we didn't get it, it's our responsibility to grow up, and this is how we take the responsibility and then know how to set boundaries. Okay? So, looking at more of an esoteric understanding of this, um, generative care, the care for all species, it begins rooted deep in the energetic body of us, and the light from source comes in all the way down through the lightning bolt, all the way down to the material realm of Malkuth, and gets us moving forward. It calls us to get off the floor, and it's moving us up. And as we agree, we move up from the floor, and we will, in part of the path, land in the beauty. And that beauty is between severity and mercy. As we move up the path, begin to get in touch with our higher spiritual self. This is highly important for us to evolve. And these are what these esoteric traditions are saying. So self-love begins from the ground and it pulls us up to beauty. Self-love to divine care. The generative care, divine care, the generative care for all moves us from the individual to the world around us, from the inside to the outside, the law of correspondence. As we begin to fully understand that we are all connected, and if one suffers, we all suffer, as we begin to work on our own internal suffering, we realize that if everyone else is suffering too, we're all connected. So that must be remedied as well. But it first has to start with our own healing, like I've been saying. And from this truth, us as a collective whole will keep reaching out to help humanity grow from their narcissistic wounds into the transformation of divine care. We have to begin this process so we can move ourselves into divine care to share with others, just like this conference is doing, just like I'm doing, and all these other folks that have gone before me are doing. We're all doing this to help humanity move forward, to inspire, to do the hard work. Thank you all for your time and attention. I do appreciate it. I hope that was helpful and straightforward. It was really great doing this, and thank you again.